If you walk through downtown Toronto, Vancouver, Calgary, or Montreal today, you might not immediately think Canada is in a recession. Restaurants are still open. Airports are busy. People are still going to work every morning. On the surface, everything appears normal. But one of the biggest mistakes investors make is believing that recessions always look dramatic. They imagine stock market crash, mass layoffs, and financial panic. The reality is very different. Most recessions begin quietly. They develop beneath the surface while people continue their daily routines. By the time the majority recognizes what is happening, the economic damage has already been done. And that is why today I want to discuss a possibility that many Canadians are beginning to feel but few fully understand. Canada may already be experiencing a recession, even if most people don't realize it yet. When I study economies, I focus on cycles. Economic history repeats itself because human behavior repeats itself. Countries borrow money, spend aggressively, experience growth, accumulate debt, and eventually face a slowdown. This pattern has occurred countless times throughout history. Canada is not exempt from these forces. Over the last decade, Canadians benefited from historically low interest rates, rising home prices, strong immigration growth, and easy access to credit. These factors created the appearance of prosperity, but prosperity built on debt is often fragile. Eventually, the cost of carrying that debt rises, and when it does, the economy begins to slow. One of the most important indicators of economic health is not GDP. It is how ordinary people feel. When average families feel financially secure, economies are generally healthy. When they begin cutting spending, delaying purchases, and worrying about bills, trouble is usually developing beneath the surface. Across Canada, millions of households are experiencing exactly that reality. Grocery bills have increased dramatically compared to just a few years ago. Housing costs remain extremely high. Insurance premiums, utility bills, transportation expenses, and everyday necessities continue consuming larger portions of household budgets. Even people with good jobs are feeling pressure. That pressure is not a sign of economic strength. It is often one of the earliest signs of economic weakness. What makes the situation particularly dangerous is that many economic statistics create an illusion of stability. Employment numbers may appear relatively healthy. Government spending may support growth figures. Population growth may make certain metrics look stronger than they truly are. But when we adjust for population growth and inflation, the picture becomes much less encouraging. Many Canadians are finding themselves worse off than they were several years ago. Their incomes have not kept pace with rising costs. Their purchasing power has declined. In practical terms, they can buy less with the money they earn. That is a hidden form of economic deterioration. Housing is perhaps the clearest example of this problem. For years, Canada's housing market became one of the most expensive in the world. Low interest rates fueled borrowing. Investors entered the market aggressively. Home prices climbed faster than incomes. For a long period, rising house prices made people feel wealthier. But there is a major difference between wealth created through productivity and wealth created through asset inflation. Productivity-based wealth is sustainable. Asset inflation often is not. When interest rates rise, housing affordability collapses. Suddenly buyers disappear. Sellers struggle to find demand. Economic activity slows. Construction weakens. Consumer confidence falls. Entire sectors of the economy begin feeling pressure. Many young Canadians have already concluded that home ownership is becoming unattainable. That belief has profound economic consequences. When people stop believing they can build wealth through traditional means, they become more cautious. They spend less. They save more aggressively. They delay major life decisions. Economic momentum slows. This process doesn't happen overnight, but it accumulates over time. Eventually, it becomes visible across the entire economy. Another major issue is debt. Canada has some of the highest household debt levels among developed economies. Debt itself is not necessarily bad. Borrowing can support growth when used productively. Problems arise when debt grows faster than income. For years, low interest rates made debt manageable. Families could refinance mortgages. Monthly payments remained relatively affordable, but interest rates changed that equation dramatically. Suddenly, many households found themselves paying significantly more to service the same debt. Money that once supported consumption is now going toward interest payments. That reduces economic activity, because every dollar spent on debt servicing is a dollar not spent elsewhere. This is one of the reasons recessions often feel confusing. People ask why businesses are struggling even though consumers are still earning income. The answer is simple. Income matters, but disposable income matters more. If a growing percentage of income goes toward mortgages, loans, and debt payments, spending power declines. Businesses notice this quickly. Sales weaken, profit margins shrink, hiring slows, investment declines. The economy begins moving in the wrong direction. Business confidence is another area worth watching closely. Entrepreneurs are often the first to detect economic weakness because they interact directly with customers. They see purchasing behavior change in real time. Across many sectors in Canada, businesses are reporting weaker demand, slower growth, and increased uncertainty. Companies become reluctant to expand when they fear future demand may weaken further. Instead of hiring aggressively, they become cautious. Instead of investing, they preserve cash. These decisions make sense individually, but collectively they slow economic growth. There is also a psychological component that many economists underestimate. Economies are driven by confidence. Confidence influences spending, investing, hiring, and borrowing decisions. When confidence deteriorates, economic activity follows. Today, many Canadians feel uncertain about their future. They worry about housing affordability. They worry about retirement savings. They worry about debt. They worry about job security. Those concerns influence behavior long before official recession declarations occur. Historically, governments often recognize recessions after they have already begun. Economic data is backward-looking. By the time economists confirm a recession, households and businesses may have been feeling the effects for months. This creates a disconnect between official narratives and personal experience. People hear politicians say the economy is strong while simultaneously struggling to pay bills. That disconnect creates frustration because lived reality often differs from headline statistics. One factor making Canada's situation especially complex is immigration. Immigration has supported labor force growth and economic activity for many years. It has provided important benefits. However, rapid population growth can also mask underlying weakness. If total GDP grows because the population grows, that does not necessarily mean individual citizens are becoming more prosperous. In fact, per capita economic performance may decline even while aggregate numbers improve. This distinction is critical because living standards ultimately determine economic well-being. Another concern is productivity. Long-term prosperity depends on productivity growth. Countries become wealthier when workers produce more value over time. Unfortunately, Canada's productivity growth has been relatively weak compared to several peer economies. Without stronger productivity gains, wage growth becomes difficult to sustain. Living standards stagnate. Debt becomes harder to manage. Economic vulnerabilities increase. Productivity may sound like a technical issue, but it directly influences the quality of life people experience every day. The global environment adds another layer of risk. Canada is deeply connected to the international economy. Weakness in major trading partners can affect Canadian exports, investment flows, and employment. Geopolitical tensions, supply chain disruptions, and slowing global growth all create challenges. Economies do not operate in isolation. Problems elsewhere eventually find their way across borders. Now, some viewers may wonder whether this means a financial catastrophe is imminent. Not necessarily. Recessions exist on a spectrum. Some are mild, others are severe. The important point is not predicting disaster. The important point is recognizing reality early. Investors who acknowledge economic changes before the crowd have an advantage. They prepare rather than react. They manage risk rather than ignore it. Throughout history, periods of economic weakness have also created opportunities. Asset prices adjust. New businesses emerge. Innovation accelerates. Strong companies gain market share. Individuals who maintain financial discipline often emerge stronger. The challenge is surviving the transition period. That requires realistic expectations, prudent financial management, and a willingness to adapt. For households, this may mean focusing on balance sheet strength, reducing unnecessary debt, building emergency savings, avoiding speculative investments, increasing financial flexibility. These actions may seem boring during good times, but they become invaluable during economic slowdowns. The people who maintain resilience during downturns are often those who prepared before problems became obvious. For investors, it means understanding that economic cycles are normal. Markets move in cycles because economies move in cycles. Periods of optimism are followed by periods of caution. Excesses eventually correct. The goal is not predicting every economic fluctuation. The goal is positioning yourself to withstand uncertainty. The biggest risk today may not be recession itself. The biggest risk may be denial. When societies ignore warning signs, problems compound. When individuals assume yesterday's conditions will continue indefinitely, economic conditions are changing. Global risks have changed. Recognizing these shifts is the first step toward navigating them successfully. If Canada is already experiencing a recession beneath the surface, the evidence will likely become clearer over time. More businesses may report weakness. More households may struggle financially. Economic statistics may eventually catch up with lived experience.